All right, guys, we're going to get going here. It's a little bit after 4:30. Thanks for coming in. Grab a seat if anyone wants to join. My name is Paul Mitchell. I'm actually a field CTO for the data protection business for Dell Technologies. And today we're going to talk about basically VMware data-focused protection, specifically around on-premise and then also into AWS, and some of the things that we are actually providing there alongside with VMware Cloud and AWS. So if you look at some of the challenges in the industry today, no one's coming to us and telling us that basically the storage footprint is shrinking anytime soon. And obviously from that standpoint, they're not being given huge budgets to effectively take advantage of to do things around data protection. Also, there's a huge community around refactoring technology as well, so taking advantage of things like containers, for example. You know, effectively, people are trying to do those things. But if you look at some of the statistics, that actually these are publicly available, that customers are actually having multi-cloud strategies, of which some of them will actually increase their cloud spend. And to be honest with you, most of our customers really get to a point where they believe that, you know, data protection is an afterthought, and it's no different when we talk about, obviously within AWS. So these are just some of the statistics, and you know, just generally just my own purpose. You know, there's a lot of this is in the sense that you know, customers will actually kind of think they have a two-cloud strategy, but ultimately it becomes a very multi-cloud strategy very quickly. So from our perspective, we have a very wide portfolio of products. We actually have software-defined, we have appliances, and we have scale-out technology. Obviously, you can deploy whatever you need. There's also a software-defined model. So when we talk about, specifically with AWS, we'll talk about how we deploy the technology there. But it allows the customers to have different scale. Obviously, there's entry products, there's scale-out technology, as well as obviously enterprise-class solutions, as well as the software-defined, as I mentioned. And the nice thing about it is it doesn't matter which route or technology that you go to, it's all managed with one single HTML5 pane of glass. So that's really kind of interesting for that perspective. The other piece to this as well, this actually also plugs into vCenter natively, so you can actually launch and actually do data protection aspects straight directly from within vCenter. So there's no link and launch. If you look at what we're really doing, you know, from a data protection standpoint, as customers transforming their journey into the public cloud, it's not an overnight transition, as you appreciate. It's effectively going to be one of those things that's just going to take some time. So what we've done with our technology portfolio is allowed our data protection technology, such as Data Domain, which is obviously our flagship data reduction storage platform, to effectively take advantage of cloud economics. So for things like long-term retention, where typically you have a long retention need or potentially tape, we give you the ability to actually extend out into Amazon S3 storage services. So that could be S3 standard infrequent access, or even in infrequent access one zone. We also have the ability to do disaster recovery, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into it. But again, what we're doing is we're leveraging the economics of cloud storage to create tertiary copies of VMs that are running on-premise. So typically you'd have a retention of the VMware on-premise for whatever your operational recovery is going to be, but we're actually creating tertiary copies that are sitting in S3 storage. So that gives you the ability to actually power those on, and we'll talk a little bit more when we get into that in a couple of slides in. But ultimately what we're doing is just really consuming cloud storage until the need that you actually need to actually instate that instance. And the instance can be spun up in VMware Cloud and AWS, can be spun up natively as an AMI, so you can actually put it into Amazon native services, and then also you can actually bring it back to any vCenter in the globe, as long as you've actually got a link across the public internet to do so. When it comes to doing things like VMware Cloud and AWS, we have the best qualified solution around that too, and we'll talk about how we're protecting those workloads, because again, out of the gate when you buy VMC or you buy your instances, you know, you're not basically getting data protection with it. You can obviously talk to your VMware sales teams, and they can actually include that with it. So now you can have the same consistent data protection components now both on-premise and as you move into VMC, so there's a consistent messaging and strategy across there as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about in-cloud workloads. So that's one of the biggest ones that a lot of people don't kind of realize the challenges. So when they obviously take advantage of putting things in AWS, if they go the kind of the hyperscaler approach and using things like EC2, for example, you know, you're kind of limited in some ways on what you can do from a backup traditional aspect of it. So obviously with VMware on-premise today, we take advantage of VADP. So we can actually do image-level backups of virtual machines without installing anything inside the instances whatsoever. There's a very lightweight data mover that we deploy on the vCenter itself. And that basically allows us to move the data out to the protection storage. But as you appreciate, when you go into one of the public hyperscalers, you don't have access to the hypervisor anymore now. So some of those things are kind of limited, and you obviously have to go down it's kind of a little bit kind of reverse transitioning, going back to installing backup agents inside virtual machines, and that's not exactly ideal, right? So we'll talk about some of these challenges as we get into it. So from an efficiency standpoint, I've already talked about this is built into the technology. It's just simply software licensing allows us to do long-term retention and disaster recovery. So there's no external gateways or any other functionality that's required. It's actually built into the technology. So we obviously like to sell our own data protection software, but by doing it this way, obviously customers can actually use the product of their choice, ultimately using the data domain as the protection storage platform from that perspective. So we can do long-term retention, as I say. It can be done for things like, you have a legal hold, for example, or you need some typically, in the month or year-based retentions that you need. You can now take advantage of economics of cloud storage. And that can be multiple cloud providers. Obviously, we're here at AWS reInvent, so we're going to talk about S3. But there's other options as well. There's also other providers as well that we can deal with this as well. The capacity extends itself, so from a logical standpoint, if you look at really the way that we work in our intellectual property, this is really the kind of the cleverness. This is how we spend our time, because obviously we're giving typical really good reduction rates, and customers have anywhere from 30, 40, 50, 60 to 1 reduction rates on the technology, and that's obviously the proven technology that we have with data domain. If you look about what I was talking about recovering to and from, right? So if you look at really what customers are asking for today is if they're in a particular brick and mortar business that effectively they have a secondary data center and they may be potentially doing nothing with it. It may be a passive site typically. And the only time that you go there is when you need to power something up or you need to bring something up because something's happened, right? So in a DR situation. So a lot of customers are really looking at taking advantage and the flexibility and agility of the public cloud to actually provide that as a kind of tertiary data center. So this could be potentially a third data center, or this could be a replacement of it. But what we do, as I said earlier, we make an augmentation of the VM image. So we do an image level backup on-premise to the technology, and then we actually pull out that image and we actually store that independently in S3 storage. We're also taking advantage, again, better together story, change block tracking. So as we send change block tracking, typically this is based around a 24-hour RPO, so backup completes on a regular basis, once a day. And then from there, you can actually send a tertiary copy or a tertiary delta change up to Amazon, and there you can actually independently access it. So we have an HTML5 console that actually runs up in a VPC, and that allows us to orchestrate the recovery of that image. One of the things we do is effectively keep it in a normal hydrated state in the sense that it's actually a VMDK or a series of VMDKs and a VMX file where you can actually reassemble the virtual machine. And then what we do is we give you the choice of where you want to put it. So do you want to run it on the native Amazon hypervisor? You can absolutely do that, and you can convert it. So the orchestration converts it from basically the traditional architecture into an AMI for you. Okay, we provide full orchestration around that, and also have full API calls into Amazon, so you can say, I want it to be this particular instance type, I want to be in this VPC, I want to put it in this subnet, I want to put this security group associated with it, and I can power it up. So we can do that. We can also convert those to AMI on a regular cadence. So for example, if you have a very low recovery time objective, like in a matter of minutes, you can convert these images ahead of time so that you can actually just basically spin them up. It's like almost the same as going into Amazon console and saying new instance and going through the wizard. You're just basically populating all the fields already. And we can also do that through a recovery plan as well. So you can actually say, here's a recovery plan of these 6 hosts. I want to bring them up in this particular order. I want to put them in this VPC, in this particular subnet. I could just hit the run button, and basically the run plan will actually go out there and do that for us. We can also put that back into ESX anywhere in the globe. So as long as you've got a vCenter somewhere, so let's say you had a completely smoking hole situation, you can effectively bring up another vCenter somewhere else and a couple of ESX hosts, and you can actually bring back those images back on premise as you need to as well. So we give the capability to do that. We also allow you to bring it up and recover it in VMware Cloud on AWS. So maybe you already have a host subscription, or maybe you want to just buy a dynamic subscription just to bring things up. We can basically do that. So that's one of the nice things that way we did this. And then also the other thing is if you do have a smoking hole situation and you've lost stuff and you're running stuff in the cloud now, running natively, let's say you lost it for 5 days and you've had access data's changed to my application in the 5 days. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to just discard everything, or do you want to bring it back on premise? So we can actually bring it back on premise. We can actually bring it back on the same with the same UID. We can actually bring it back on time with the same IP address as well if you really want to do that. And we can bring it back on. It will actually come back to Ion as a brand new instance. So you can actually then, once it's back on premise, you can then vMotion it or actually put it anywhere that you want to within your ESX environment. So it's a two-way street. It's not necessarily one way. Typically what we see in the market is from a competition standpoint, the competitors are all about putting it out there, putting it out there, putting it out there. There's no real thoughts about actually bringing it back, right? So that's what this solution is designed around. So talking about VMC, if you've looked at VMC specifically, you know it's obviously ESX, it's NSX, and it's vSAN running in its own VPC within Amazon. What we recommend in this situation is using our data domain technology along with the software in its own VPC, so it actually gives you its own fault domain as well, so you're not dependent inside VMC. You could run it in VMC if you wanted to, but there are some cost considerations in there today, right? So typically with the vSAN, it's all flash. If you want to put all flash in for a data protection technology, go ahead. I don't necessarily believe that's the way to go. But ultimately what we're doing with our technology is we're actually writing our deduplicated data to S3 storage. So effectively the rates that you see for S3 storage and now can put that applicable deduplication rate against it. So if you're getting a 10-to-1 or a 20-to-1, that's typically what you're getting from a pricing model. So, and again, it's really just seamless. We're moving the data across the ENI, so that's typically a 20 gigabit second link between there, and obviously there's no egress costs as we're not going out across the public internet. So whatever you move across there is going to be a very efficient aspect anyway. Obviously doing VADP, we're actually doing source-based deduplication and compression before we move anything anyway. So ultimately you're getting the best efficiency to actually write out to protection storage. So again, this is all part of the VMC offering. You can actually work with your sales rep and they can actually sell you this solution as well as part of it with your subscription models as well. So I will talk a little bit about Kubernetes a little bit. So it's been kind of top of mind for a lot of people. The joke of the day is, why is it called K8S? It's called K8S. It's the same thing as Kubernetes. This is developers are typically lazy, and there's 8 characters between K and S in Kubernetes. If you know, that's the fact find of the day. But we're actually doing some stuff here. VMware actually acquired a company last year, which is now available, which is called Velero, and we're taking advantage of Velero now to effectively provide data protection services for containers. Most people say, well, aren't containers stateless? Yes, typically, but some of them actually have application data in them, or you have persistent volumes that you actually have outside as well. So how do you want to protect that stuff? So our strategy is to have one tool to basically do everything pretty much around this space. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Velero, just basic from this perspective. So there's a couple of different things that we do. The way that it's actually deployed is we create 2 different namespaces, one for Velero and then one for actually our protection software. So they have their own namespaces in there independently. So we're actually using the Kube Control API to actually probe into here. I'll actually tell all the pods that's available, the namespaces, the instances, everything that's out there, the PVCs, and then we can actually take, obviously, a snapshot of those things, and then we can actually write them out to protection storage. So this would be the data domain, or you can actually, as a little bit down the road, we'll actually the ability to write to Amazon S3 or an S3 compatible object store as well. So this can be done, obviously, in the cloud. This can be done on premise. It doesn't really make any difference. But you know, what you find with Kubernetes specifically is people tend to start off small with the small containers. They put workloads in it, and they have data inside it, and then they realize that that's not the smartest thing to do, and then they move into a full-blown Kubernetes infrastructure of whatever flavor that you want. And then from here, we're just allowing you to actually do this, and now you can actually back these instances up, and then obviously pull those out and actually do whatever you need to do with it. So again, it's fully integrated from this perspective. Obviously, it will support what's coming along the line with obviously Tanzu and all the other infrastructure around it as VMware goes to launch with that. So again, we're just using this technology from VMware as our data movement for containers. So the goal here is having one data protection technology. So whether it's VMware, whether it's actually Kubernetes, whether it's containers, from the same thing, and obviously giving you enterprise class functionality with the best deduplication rates. So just to kind of wrap up on a couple of different things around what I've already talked about. So obviously the ability to back up to the cloud, disaster recovery, long-term retention, these are all built into the technology. So again, today I'm going to talk about specifically with AWS. Obviously, we can run this locally on-premise to provide some of this functionality, but also there are virtual instances which are already form-factored for Amazon. So there's actually, it's in the marketplace, it's in a CloudFormation template, so there's EC2 versions of these as well. So you can go and deploy them today. You can go to Amazon Marketplace. You can deploy the data protection technology without anything from us, except for some point there's going to be a licensing conversation, right? But that's the way the technology works. But obviously, giving you the availability to do this, again, We built in a lot of technology into a proven storage efficiency anyway, so things are encrypted in flight, obviously encrypted at rest, so we can take advantage of that, and we're taking advantage of cloud economics where we possibly can. So, last slide, just really kind of why. Obviously, you appreciate we're here from Dell Technologies. We obviously have some umbrella company, and then obviously below that we have a lot of different subsidiary companies. But from a data protection with VMware, we are the best and enterprise class solution around it from the functionality that we provide. As I said, we do everything we can possibly do with things like change log tracking. We take advantage of VADP. We do a lot of efficiency from scale at this point. And obviously we have plugins into things like VCD. You have plugs into VRA and VRO as well, so that you can actually create blueprints and actually orchestrate data protection around it. So if you actually are using things like VRO, you can basically go inside there, and even with VRA, you have the functionality to include data protection in those schemas as well. So when you deploy those instances, whether it's a SQL instance or whatever it is, you can say data protection, yes or no. Do I want the gold, bronze, silver policy, whatever I need to do. So you can actually take a lot of the guesswork out of this deployment as well. So, and that's all I have from a slide perspective, but I appreciate people coming in. If there's any questions, let me know. Here to help. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.